Alrighty. Hello. Who are you? What are you running for? And what's your party?
My name is Morgane Oger. I'm running for City Council with Progress Vancouver.
Wonderful. What are your top 3 priorities?
Oh, well, I would say that the top one priority by far, which eclipses all the others for us, is the available of affordable housing in Vancouver that meets the needs of the people who live in Vancouver. That's actually the foundation of the other priorities for me. This next priority is to make Vancouver safer for everyone. That means safer for people who are currently street homeless, safer for people who are using drugs, safer for people who are experiencing random violence, and safer overall for families and children, and to make them want to stay. And finally, I think the third one, I have to think long and hard about that. And when I'm talking about the things I care about, something that I personally care about a lot, because I'm involved with schools a lot. I've got quite a background in school advocacy because I was the District Parent Advisory Council Chair, and I did a lot of advocacy for human rights in schools. I care a lot about how in Vancouver, the Vancouver School Board is finding itself incapable of getting the province to do anything about not enough students in schools. And so I care a lot about doing whatever the city can do to help prop up student numbers in schools by building affordable housing around the schools that are underused, so that families will choose to move there. And by affordable, I mean market housing that families can afford, 2, 3 or more bedrooms in multifamily housing, 4 floors or so, 6 floors for rentals or nonprofits. That's what I really care about. I think if we get those things addressed, the city of Vancouver will be much better a place to live in.
Amazing. Now, on the safety thing, I would just like to thank you, because I think that when a lot of people are talking about safety right now, it's for what they would call regular citizens, and you describe safety from another side of that spectrum. So I'd just like to say I really appreciate that, because it's not that this neighborhood is unsafe for the rest of the city, it's unsafe for them.
So we're in the downtown east side right now, and it's exactly that. I think too many people forget that there's all kinds of Vancouverites, and all Vancouverites have the right to live in dignity and in safety, and that when we make it so that our city doesn't support the needs of some of us to live in dignity or in safety, it actually impacts all of us. You know, the people that you referred to as regular people.
Yeah, exactly. I can't quote because I'm holding the camera. But
you know, regular people, I think. So we're talking about the mainstream voter, the missing middle, let's say. It's totally true that those individuals often don't consider that their safety goes through the safety of others. That if people were resilient and safe, then they would actually reduce the level of risk others face. And I think this is important.
Let's scooch down.
Yeah.
I think they can get a little louder.
There will always be a group of men who think I'm
Weird.
Oh, right. My mom is here.
Thank you. Should we go right to the end, or? Oh no, this. Yeah.
Up to you.
Yeah, here. Okay.
But I mean, the utter self-absorbedness.
I know, really.
Of walking right next to people who are obviously recording something.
The nerve.
It's just the supreme assholery of people who have
I'm still rolling, by the way.
worried about others.
Not that you care. Okay, let's try it again. So, kind of leading.
All right, we've moved.
Yeah, we've moved. Now moved. Thanks, guys. Oh, did I move? There we go. So, kind of segueing into that, what does housing mean to you? Because I think I've found over all this talking and looking at people's campaigns, that housing's used in like maybe 4 different ways. So like, for example, what really struck and hurt me was seeing like the first effort of Kennedy's election, which, you know, he had a lot more money to do a lot more for, and it only happened 2 weeks before the election, never mind. But he put out a reel on Instagram that was saying, you know, when he was younger, he lost his home, his dad lost his job, and they lost their home, and he would never want anyone to go through this. And then did not include people living in tents in that sentiment at all. So like conflating losing a mortgage or defaulting on a mortgage with living in a tent, to me, is just insane in this city and like more than tone deaf. So what does housing mean to you, once again?
I think anybody who has been, anybody who as a child had a traumatic experience would be impacted by it. And I feel for the current mayor for the fact that this really impacted him deeply. I know that, you know,
that's very gracious of you.
Issue,
I didn't.
I run into issues myself, and I always feel, I always hope that the issue, you know, the issues that I as a trans woman, as an activist, and in the public eye, the issues I face, I always hope they don't affect my children, right? I'm very mindful of how this could cause an impact on my kids, right? I'm gonna speak louder now.
Yeah.
But I would say that housing to me is security. In reality, it's very important to me to have security and that people have security, and that comes from a place where we have that comes from a place where actually not so long ago I spent several months without housing, where I had to live in my truck, and when I had to couch surf from a friend who, thank goodness, helped me out. I was lucky. I did have access to housing elsewhere, and so I ended up going somewhere else and living in up the coast a little bit. But for that time period when I had no options, I remember how scared I was. You know, I think we all have the same fear, and this is something that drives my lens on housing and on housing policy. Specifically, as we know, access to housing is the single most important thing. If you're able to be in housing that's suitable for you and that meets your needs and that's safe, and that you can afford, then food security is assured, right? You can afford your food if your housing is not too expensive. It gives you mental health advantages. It gives you the ability, so secure housing keeps you off of homelessness, of course, keeps you in better mental health than insecure housing, and therefore makes you less likely to have to use, you know, some people call it self-medication, other people call it tooling, coping skills, coping equipment, but it gives you the option of not, you know, like less of an interest than drugs. And so I think that to me, the loss of appropriate and suitable housing is the beginning of a fall for people, and too often we want to address them. So what do I want to do? I want more housing built in Vancouver faster, cheaper, and I want it to be multifamily housing because that's cheaper, but I want it to be built in a way that doesn't undo the cheapness, and I want it to be available to people who live here. We know what kind of prices people in Vancouver can afford, and City Council, as a councillor, if I'm elected or when I'm elected, I'm really hoping that what I'll do is I'll make housing affordable for people who live here.
Beautiful. Other than housing, you know, which is the obvious, you know, antidote to homelessness, what are your plans for that? I guess also like in terms of what are you aware of what's actually possible with the city versus what they say is possible?
Right. There's a lot of things being talked about that are outside of the mandate of the city. For example, you know, there are some easy wins, and then there's some very difficult wins and some impossible wins. I'm trying to get the easy wins and the difficult wins done. I'm not going to do the impossible wins. For example, an impossible win would be to reform the Criminal Code of Canada and to tell the police what to do about the criminal code. Impossible. There's no point in talking about it it is not going to happen.
Interesting.
You know, just not going to
I
happen.
haven't tried, so I
Right?
won't.
We're not going to be able to tell the Vancouver Police Department how to address crime. We are, however, going to be able to tell the Vancouver Police Department, for example, how to address certain bylaw infractions. And that's an interesting problem. Like right now, you have this situation where, to give an example, we have the chief of police, the chief of the firefighters, I think that's the title. Please excuse me about the titles. I would need my notes for this. Who has ordered the clearing of Hastings from encampments, right? And you would, the tool for this would be policing. But of course, that's not okay because...
they tried that on the one day and then they...
and also, the reality is that the people were forced there when the park board decided to not let them camp for multiple days in the parks. Instead of giving people who are living unhoused in Vancouver a choice, which would have been maybe a difficult thing to do, slightly difficult because of politics, they did the easy runaway trick, which is to kick people down the road, right?
Yeah.
Until we find ourselves in a situation where it's untenable. Like I think we all agree that the current situation on Hastings is untenable. We have to find a better solution to this. What I'd like to do, something that I think is possible, we've been talking about what to do about homelessness in Vancouver. Different voices have different lenses, and it's important to appreciate people who are street homeless. If I'm speaking to street homeless people, I'll say, you have a right to live in dignity, and you have a right, you have guaranteed rights of freedom. You have the right to be safe, and you have the right to be in dignity. And the situation right now where people are street homeless in Vancouver doesn't look safe to me, right? And it certainly is not dignity. And we can do better than this. If I was speaking to people who don't like seeing street homeless people, I would say, you have a right to a certain amount of comfort, but not an infinite right. I would say,
well said.
I would say that you however, have the right to safety. Safety is a basic right. Safety in Vancouver is the basic job of the city, the most fundamental job. And I would say that the situation right now, where we have unaddressed mental health issues, where we have street homelessness in large numbers, I think 2,000 people, where we have addiction and mental health mixing together in terrible ways, that's not safe and that's not dignified, and we want to do better. I'd like to address that. Now, we're not the province. We can't go and fund addiction programs. That's not something the city really can do.
Interesting. I'm learning bit by bit what are the provincial things that we're waiting for.
We could take money away from paving the streets, right? But we can't actually run the medical system or the psychiatric system or the mental health program. That's a provincially funded system paid for by taxpayers. You know what we can do though? We can sue the province for doing its job. We could do that, and I bet you Kennedy Stewart's never going to sue the province. I have no qualms about bringing consequence to the accountable organizations. I think that would be the last thing that I want to do. I would much rather, for example, bring in friendships and bring in alliances and work together to get things done. But if nobody's listening, there's always the law. Meanwhile, though, what we have to do is we have to help people find dignity, right? And for that particular issue, the dignity that I see is, I think we want to do encampments. I think we want to do small encampments that are like not too hot and not too cold, but just right. We want to do, I don't know, maybe that's 60 people, something like that. And I think we should experiment and find the sweet spot. I would like to have encampments where people can basically take a campsite number on the encampment, maybe in unused parking lots or in all the parking lots.
Parking lots, I often say that there's more space for cars than people in this city. And I have some great plans for you. So
I have no qualms with people not being able to drive to work. No qualms with that. There's other ways to get to work. Oh, you live too far? That's okay. Move to Vancouver. Right? It's too expensive.
If you can,
Let's do something about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't like the idea of people working in Vancouver and living in Port Moody or something. I mean,
It's rough.
I'm
It's
okay
rough.
with you doing that if that's you, but really, I would rather people who work in Vancouver to live in Vancouver, to pay Vancouver taxes.
Yeah, well, like personally, I don't drive, so I can't go out and live somewhere cheaper because you know I won't be able to see people. I won't, you know, I can't afford to take taxis when transit ends. So yeah,
So we'd like to use unused land, and we'd like to have encampments, probably with some fence, maybe not, hard to say. And these encampments would have facilities that have places to wash your things. They'd have lockers, and then they'd have power because everybody deserves electricity. It's
yes,
like this is a fundamental today, right?
yeah,
If I have my way, we would also have Wi-Fi in them.
yeah. That's
and
also
because
a goal.
that's a part of resilience for us.
Well, and it's
for all
also
of
it's
us.
also part of mental health and addiction. Like imagine going through the pandemic without the internet. For
Exactly,
example.
for example.
You know, like these people can't come home and pop on New Girl and you know just chill.
I remember I was speaking to a senior person at the Vancouver Public Library. They did an event for city council candidates, and the person was talking with like tears in her eye, tears of joy, about how people are so motivated and so love the computers at the library that when the library opens, they run to the computer terminal, totally overlooking the reality that they need that terminal to access the internet, and they have no options. And then if they don't run, they're not going to get a seat, and therefore they're not going to get
there's
internet.
no more internet cafes in the city.
That's right. And if they don't have
corner stores, don't have computers.
And if they don't
anymore.
have internet, they can't fill out that form that they need to get the service they're trying to get.
Yeah.
And so it's actually, they're running to access their public services. And this is terrible. We need to do better than this. And people will say, how are you going to fund this? I have so many ideas for funding. Here's a good one. You know the developers that own all those lots where they're not paying taxes? And they're not paying taxes because it's too expensive for them to put up the building they want to put up. So instead, they put a vegetable garden for free.
That's what those
Right?
are. Right.
The vegetable garden's not free. They're not paying their millions of dollars a year of taxes that they're supposed to pay. Instead, you get a vegetable garden.
And then they lock it.
And then they finally get permission and they just destroy it all. No notice, lock it up, and things. This is disgusting, right?
I know.
It's
I
like the
didn't know
sweetheart
that.
deals for developers. No, we should put a tent city in there. We should, or an encampment, or services, something for the public good. Developers should not get sweetheart deals from the city that were worked out in back rooms between friends, between the mayor and their fundraising friends. That is not okay.
Yeah, absolutely not. You've kind of answered all of my questions and more. So just again, your name, what you're running for, and where we find you on the internet.
My name is Morgane Oger. I'm running for Progress Vancouver. Oger is spelled O-G-E-R, like
I've got your chest now.
like this. Hey, my eyes are up here.
Yeah.
And OGER, I'm number 121 on the ballot, and I'm running with 5 other city council candidates, and I'm running with Mark Marison, who's running for mayor. And if you could just pick a whole slate and do the whole slate, I guarantee you that everybody on my slate is going to live up to the promises we made. I believe very strongly in accountability, and I'm not messing around.
I certainly hope so, because I know you're the real deal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
I
so
hope
much
I'm the
for
real
your
deal.
time.
And anybody can come and hold me up. I have one last thing. If if you're gonna vote and you want me to know that you're gonna vote with us, you can send a text message to 778-745-0200 and write pledge, PLEDGE, and then I'll know that you're gonna vote for me.
Amazing.
And that would be amazing if you did that, because knowing who's voting for us, that's the number one challenge right now. It would be really helpful.
Beautiful. Thank you so much
Thank
for your
you
time.
so much for inviting me.
Beautiful.